Welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the podcast that gives you a peek inside the minds of some truly inspirational teachers. This week, I'm excited to welcome Andrew Keegan onto the podcast to talk about all things music education. Andrew's passion for teaching is on another level, and wherever you are in your career, young or old, master or apprentice, I know you're going to love this episode. Before we get started, I'd like to ask a small favour. One of the ways to help ensure this podcast reaches the many teachers not using social media is to leave a review wherever you are listening. It should only take a second, and it would mean so much to know that these interviews were reaching those they can help. As a thank you, one reviewer will be chosen at random during episode 8 of season 2 and receive signed copies of Thinking Deeply About Primary Mathematics, Christopher Such's The Art and Science of Primary Reading, Shannon Doherty's 100 Ideas for Primary Teachers, Maths, and the Research Aid Guide to Curriculum, which features none other than Neil Almond. So without further ado, let's spend some time thinking deeply about primary music education. So Andy, we always start with our guests in numbers just to get a flavour of who they are.
Yep.
And so obviously you know the rules. You can only answer with numbers. And my first question is years as a teacher.
15 years as a teacher. If you include my PGC year, then it'll be 16, but 15 qualified, yeah.
Last year group taught?
4.
Most important year group?
I'm going to go with -1. I mean reception with that one. Listening to other people, it's an impossibly difficult question to answer that one because everyone will have their reasons for lots of different things. But I think if you set up your reception really well, then you're setting up everybody else for good progress, I think. So I'm gonna go with -1, but I mean reception with that.
Excellent. I'm with you on that one. Favorite year group?
Year 4.
Can play number of instruments?
I'm gonna go a tentative 3 because I've played 3 different instruments on the radio, but it's a really tricky one. As a musician, I will try and turn my hand to all sorts of different things. But if you're looking for some sort of proper competence, then 3 I'll go with.
Excellent. Number of instruments owned?
I had a quick count round. I'm going for 25.
Wow.
I'm not sure if you can see just behind me there. I've got a rack of 5 trumpets hanging up there just to add up a load of instruments. I've got lots of kind of weird and wonderful things. Like people will send me random brass instruments every now and then, and you can see that one there at the top there. I've got a post horn, which is 3 or 4 foot long, which is great. I've got random kind of antique stuff like that as well. So I'll go with 25 because I've got a load of percussion instruments as well. Some things that I've made myself just because,
Nice, that's impressive. I think when we were going to go to Research Ed Cymru in, was it 2020?
Yeah.
Did you have a competition that weekend as well?
I did, yeah. So I played in I played for a brass band, and when pre-pandemic, then the brass band world is actually there's lots of competition goes on, and they have a national competition. I'm not sure if you've seen the film Brassed Off. Yeah. From the mid-90s. So the end of that, the competition they go to there at the Albert Hall is the championship section. It's like the Premier League. The absolute top band go there. But what you have to do is you have to compete at a national level first. So they have what's called areas. So Wales is just one area, and England is split up into all sorts of. You got north, south, northeast, north. All sorts of different areas. So on that particular day, I'd actually been in Swansea competing in the Welsh area, and then I was supposed to jump a train to Cardiff to meet up with you guys to go to Research Ed, but the weather was so bad. It was during one of those storms. I can't remember the name of the storm now, but it was so bad that they'd literally cancelled all public transport and everything, and it was impossible to get there. Even driving would have been difficult because the motorways, there's a couple of stretches on the M4 which are quite busy, and they tend to close them in high winds as well. So yeah, I'd been competing in a contest that morning and was due to come over. But I think the last couple of years worth of anything has just been a write-off because they've already cancelled, because they tend to hold the area competitions in kind of March, end of February, March time. And everything's already been cancelled, which is understandable, to be honest with you. I think we're just waiting for a reset in the, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the autumn, maybe, where things can possibly pick up again. It's been a real difficult time, actually, for musicians generally, because it's a massive outlet for lots of people. You know, it's apart from being a social thing, you know, I think this is the first year that I didn't play a single Christmas concert, for example. You know, I didn't play a single Christmas carol at all, not even in school. You know, it's been a really interesting, difficult year music wise. So yeah, I'm fingers crossed I'll pick up again.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, I think that Cymru was on February 29th-ish, and that was probably the last time anyone wasn't thinking, you know, the worst thing that was happening was driving up the M3 or whatever in torrential rain at 11 o'clock at night, you know, and then a couple of weeks later, everything was totally different. So back to the highest grade of those instruments?
Grade 8.
Lowest grade?
Grade 8 on my trumpet. I'm going to go with 0. I've only ever done grades on the trumpet. I haven't actually done grades on anything else. I was practicing for grade 5 piano when I was at school, but I never got around to taking the exam. So yeah, 0. Lowest grade.
Podcasts? Just
the one podcast.
And Enjoyably Futile podcast episodes?
20 so far, because obviously I think we've got I think there's 8 weeks, there's 8 episodes left of this series. So I tend to run the podcast every 2 weeks. I started off trying to do one a week, and it was impossibly difficult to try and get it done, because recording, editing, finding time to interview people, you know, it takes up quite a bit of time to try it. So I took it down to 2 weeks. So I've probably got about 4 or 5 episodes left of this series, and maybe an additional one just to round up the series. We'll have to see.
I reckon our worlds online sort of overlap quite a bit. But if anyone's listening and they're not sure what the Enjoyably Futile podcast is about, how would you sum it up for them?
So if anyone follows me, or to be fair, not just follows me, but follows Twitter on a Monday evening. So Monday evening is kind of quiz time on BBC TV. So at the moment you have Mastermind, Only Connect, and University Challenge. And I started running a game about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago now. Basically, the premise is really simple. We just try and predict answers that are going to come up on that evening show of University Challenge. A bit like bingo. You just pick some random answers and see if they come up. And it started off as 2 or 3 people playing, and then all of a sudden we've jumped to, I think the average is between kind of 100 and 120 people a week joining in. And that, you know, ramps up in terms of notifications and tweet numbers, which is huge. And the community from that became quite big. So what I started doing was I started running the Enjoyably Futile podcast, because someone described the game as being enjoyably futile, because it's a fun thing to do, but it is very, very difficult to win. You know, out of 100, 120 people a week, I think the most I've had is 13 winners a week. But I usually it's only 4 or 5 people, which is a small percentage of winners, but it's good fun. So the Enjoyably Futile podcast is it stems from that. So we talk about the University Challenge, the episodes that have been, and then I have a guest, I have an interview with people, and sometimes we just talk about random stuff that's kind of fun, difficult, and we run some quizzes and just have a bit of fun for half an hour, really.
Nice. And it's always really enjoyable to listen to it. And I listened to Lloyd, who obviously was on the sort of pilot episode of this podcast. And one of his impossible questions was about university with the postcode BT7.
Yeah.
Obviously, knowing exactly where Queen's University Belfast is, I'm thinking I would have had a point.
Yeah. Well, I try and go out of my way and pick questions that I know people aren't going to know. So I absolutely would not have asked you that question, because the whole point is that they're supposed to be impossibly difficult questions. But that's why I asked him about Penge and Porthcawl, because Lloyd's from just down the road from Porthcawl, from Bridgend, I think it is. And I think he'd been working in Southwark because Penge is southeast London. It's like the end of the road for the 176 bus, I think it is. And then the next stop is Croydon, I believe. So I like to pick things that are sort of linked to people, but things that aren't going to be too obvious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. I was shouting at the radio. Will I'm on. And then tweets.
I had to have a look, actually. I'm up to 34.1 thousand.
Oh, I think that is exactly the same as Shannon, possibly.
Yeah, funny enough, I just listened to Shannon's episode because she pointed out that most people from your previous podcasts had been embarrassed by how high their numbers were. And so, I've done like 4,000 or 5,000. And I'm sitting there going, no, I've done 34,000. But I would add that a lot of that has come over the past couple of years from a Monday night. You know, I'll send anywhere in the region of 200 tweets on a Monday evening, because either just replying to people or joining in conversations. So, you know, if you add that up over a couple of years, it's a huge number of tweets just for that particular game.
Yeah, because you're trying to get back to absolutely everybody who enters and stuff, and then there's a conversation.
Yeah, and it is really hard, because you have this flurry of about an hour and a half of people replying, and some people will reply to the original tweet, some people won't, some people will use the hashtag, some people won't use the hashtag, so it makes it really difficult trying to find people. But I try and make sure that I reply to everybody, but it means that just by doing that, it adds up 120 tweets, and that's not including any additional, you know, joining in with whatever people are saying.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And then probably the most important question: Highway 61 revisited or 1999?
Oh, do you know, I think this is probably going to be the hardest question you're going to ask me today, because, and this is actually something I'm going to talk about later on, is that I don't think that it's comparable. I don't think you can choose. I think it depends on what mood you're in. I'm going to tentatively say 1999, I think, but I know I'm going to upset a lot of fans by saying that opposite. But you could add in any album into that, and it would just be you would just cause ructions, I think. You know. So I'm going to stick with what I say. I'm going to say 1999. I think.
Yeah, no, I think they both share a lot of commonality, but as you say, you can't compare them directly with each other. You know, in terms of how they impacted on music. You know, both big albums. So it's just me being mischievous putting that in there, really.
I don't mind that. I like a bit of a controversy in a podcast. Why not?
So you're a teacher, music specialist, and maths lead. Tell us about your journey and how you got here.
All right, so I'm gonna go a little bit further back than just teaching, because I think it's important to kind of understand what kind of goes on in my head generally. So I'm going to take you back best part of 30 years. I think if people are being really pedantic, we'll say 29 years, to when I was 8 and I first started making music and started playing trumpet. Because over the time that I've been teaching and that I've been doing things, I have tried to kind of move away from music to do other things. But I think there's just that inherent need and desire to play music, which kind of drives everything that I've ever done, to be honest with you. So I started playing music when I was 8, and that pretty much took up most of my time. You know, I had to make some quite big choices. You know, I had to make choices between music and sport, for example, because they happened at the same time. So I did music. Talking of contests, for example, you know, I started contesting with brass bands when I was 16 and had to give up a lot of other things because they take up a lot of time. And then I went to university to do a music degree at the University of Liverpool, and I did this is where teaching kind of comes into it. I did probably what a lot of music students do, is I took on a couple of private pupils, just to earn a couple of extra quid, to be honest with you, you know, beer tokens and stuff like, you know, just so I could afford to kind of live. And from that, I got taken on at an after-school club who offered music lessons and other things. They offered kind of art and drama and all sorts of creative things at an after-school club in the Everton Valley area of Liverpool. And I just kind of I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed the kind of the joy that young people got out of particularly making music. So following my degree, I was in that position as a 20-year-old trying to figure out what on earth I'm supposed to do with my life. So I kind of followed in. I've got an educational family as well. My mum is a teacher. My stepfather was a teacher and teacher educator. So I had a good idea of what the job entailed. So I did my PGCE. And then following that, the advice I was given was that if I wanted to find a job, the best thing to do would probably be to move to London, because jobs in Liverpool are very, very hard to come by. And I'm sure lots of people will have had this experience in their time. You're not necessarily going to be able to find a job where you grew up. So you move away to a bigger city, to a bigger place, or where there's going to be jobs, especially something like music. Music departments are not massive departments in schools. I've worked as a department of one, and I've worked as a department as four. You've got that real difference. So I moved to London, and I got a job out in Surrey. I was living in southeast London at the time. I was working out in Surrey, and I was there for about 18 months. I did my NQT year and stayed for a little bit longer, but the commute was absolutely crippling. I was having to leave my house at like 6 o'clock in the morning to get to work on time, because if I missed the train or if I missed the bus, it was just an absolute nightmare. So after that, I went on supply just for a bit, just to kind of put the feelers out and see what else was there. And so I should say that my PGC originally was in secondary music originally, but I also did a day a week working with the Liverpool Music Service. And part of that actually involved going in for half a day to teach primary music. So I had quite a broad experience of training, but I'm sure a lot of people have said as well, the PGC is a bit like learning to drive a car, in that they teach you how to pass the test, but you don't really start learning about teaching or driving until you actually get behind the driver's seat and get going. It's that starting point, but actually you've got a lot more to learn. And even after 15 years, something's always coming up, and I'm going, oh, I need to ask someone about this because I'm not sure. It's a never-ending learning curve. So my NQT year I did as a secondary teacher, but I went on supply. And I got a phone call one day randomly just saying, oh, this primary school needs a PPA teacher. Would you be up for it? I'm like, well, I've never taught full-time in a primary school before. I'll give it a go, see what it's like. But it was quite a good opportunity because it was 3 days a week, PPA. So I wasn't planning anything. I was being given the work. So it was a really great opportunity just to kind of hone my teaching craft and learn about the primary curriculum without having to do a lot of the work myself. It sounds a bit lazy, but it was actually quite nice because there were experienced teachers giving me things to work on, so I could see what year 5 and year 4 and year 3 and year 6 and year 1 were working on in maths and literacy. So it was actually a really good opportunity. And I found myself preferring working in the primary setting, if I'm honest. I'm not going to be negative about secondary teaching at all, because one of the things I do miss about working in a secondary school, and I do miss teaching GCSE and A-level music, having that really higher level discussion and creative processes where you're producing compositions which are borderline professional in some cases. But I do prefer working in a primary setting because it's just a really broad thing to work in. You're teaching all subjects in most part, and again I'll talk about this later on. And it just comes down to personal preference, I think. And there are some people that will say opposite. They'll say that they much prefer working in a secondary school because they can't possibly see how they could work with the younger children. Whereas some people say they can only work with reception, for example, because they can't work with the juniors. It all comes down to personal preference. So yeah, I worked there for a year, pretty much, just kind of learning how the primary curriculum worked. But again, I kind of hit a bit of a point where I didn't really know whether I wanted to stay in London or not. So I moved back to the Northwest and I got a job in near Wigan. near St Helens, sorry, in the northwest of England. But at the same time, I had also met Rachel, my now wife. So we kind of lived apart for the first year, and then I moved back to London. But what was quite nice was I'd gone back to the same school that I'd done my PPA cover in, but this time I went back as a class teacher. The head teacher took me on as a full-time teacher, which was really great, because I'd had that opportunity to kind of practice and learn how primary schools worked. And then I was going in almost as an NQT, really, and having that kind of that opportunity then to carry on. And also because of the nature of working in London, and I'm sure lots of people will find this, that opportunity comes up very, very quickly when you're working in the city. So very, very quickly, I got a TLR position and things like that. So again, it gave me the opportunity just to kind of dip my toes in the kind of leadership area and see how those sorts of things worked, and kind of learning how to have discussions with people, when you've looked through people's books, or when you've sat in a part of a lesson, things like that. So that was quite nice. And then after a little while, having spent piles and piles and piles of money renting a tiny little flat in Clapham, we kind of had to make a few decisions about whether or not we wanted to stay in London forever. So we decided that we wanted to kind of move, and you're looking around about where to move to. The choices were pretty much either move back up to the northwest where I'm from, or move to South Wales, which is where Rachel's from. So we moved to Wales, and it was almost like pressing a reset button. And I got to say that, Rachel has always wanted to be a teacher. She went to university to do, she did a teaching degree. She's always wanted to be a teacher. She's always wanted, that's what she wants to do. And she's a very, very good teacher. And she was literacy coordinator in the school we were in. And even for her, coming back to where we are, it was like nobody knew who we were, and trying to find work was very, very difficult to begin with. But as time went on, we found things eventually. I went back to secondary school for a couple of years, but it's very, very different in terms of expectations, in terms of what we were teaching. So I was teaching WJC music, and I'd never taught WJC music before, so having to basically teach myself a whole set of brand new GCSE content was interesting. So I did that for a couple of years, but I really did just miss working in a primary school. I don't know what it was, and I could have stayed there. It wasn't too far away, and the opportunity was there to do lots of different things, but I just kind of missed being a primary teacher. And again, I found a few places. Again, jobs in Wales are a bit like jobs in Liverpool. They are hard to come by. But if you get yourself known, if you dip your toes in the water, if you do a maternity cover, for example, you do a good job, then the chances are that you're going to move on to something else. So after a couple of pretty much a couple of maternity covers, I've ended up where I am now, and I've been in my school for this is my 4th year now at my current school. And again, because of the area that I'm kind of trained in, the immediate thing was to kind of put me in charge of music. There's a big shift in Wales in terms of the new curriculum, so you don't necessarily have leaders for music and art and such like. What they do is they've now put things into areas of learning, so we kind of work as a team rather than individual people, which is quite nice actually. So I'm part of a couple of people who work on the expressive arts. I take obviously more control of what happens in music, but in terms of the other expressive arts subjects, we kind of work together and look at different things like that. And just as chance would have it, I ended up taking over maths, and maths is one of those really interesting ones for me because I find it fascinating now that I'm older and I understand it a bit more. I find maths absolutely fascinating. I love things like logic and problem solving and puzzles and things. That aspect of maths and numeracy is really, really great. I really love that, and I love teaching problem solving. It's probably one of the most fun things that I like to teach. But I'm, anyone who knows me from growing up would probably be surprised by me saying that, because I failed my maths mock exam catastrophically, like literally got like nothing. absolutely nothing. But it told me a few things. It told me, one, I probably just needed to work harder, because I sat down and I revised for that and I revised for that and I passed. I think I got a B in the end, which isn't too bad a grade at GCSE. I know it's not, flying, but I went from failing massively to getting a B, which is all right. But also, actually, it kind of drives a lot of what I feel not to do when teaching. Because I remember most of my teaching, with the exception of very practical subjects, because even music in my school was literally sit behind a desk and get talked at for an hour. And I don't learn very well like that. And basically the expectation is that we get told. So funny enough, listening to Shannon's interview, and where she's talking about lots of modeling and lots of repetition and just making sure that people understand what it is they're doing, whereas I was very much, I'm going to show you how to do this and then you get on with it. And I can't do that. So I took a lot of how I was taught and kind of do the opposite in a way, because it kind of just drives a lot of what I do. So I just as chance would have it, the opportunity to be maths coordinator came up in my school. And again, it's just been another really interesting thing, especially with the new curriculum coming in. And I would also add on, I've kind of added to my remit in school side, because we're quite a small school. We don't have massive teams of people. Our deputy head has 3 or 4 individual roles which could easily be assigned to one person. That's the kind of system we're working with. So it is quite busy, but because we've got the new curriculum coming in, and because there's been a really big drive in research and reading and implementation of actual things that people have looked at rather than just things that you found online. So I've kind of taken on that mantle a little bit as well. So I kind of do a lot of reading and feeding back to school as well. So I find it really interesting listening to your other podcasts when people have been talking about curriculum and things that they think are important. I know you've interviewed Neil Almond, and I've chatted with Neil before, and I've seen him talk, and I've read his chapter. I've actually used his chapter from his research ed thing that he wrote as some evidence that I've put forward to staff and to governors as well, because I think that conversation needs to be had. So yeah, that's where I am.
Nice, that's action packed. Although it is 15 years, so
yeah. Do you know, when you asked that question, I I started counting. I was going, I worked here and I've done this, and I've been here and I've done that, because I forget how old I am sometimes, and I forget how long I've been doing the job, because I literally went straight from school to university to PGC and straight back into school. I've never known any different. It's what I've done, and but like I said before, I've been doing it for this long. And I will still happily listen to people who've been teaching for 4 or 5 years, because that's what their level of expertise is, and I said before, I will always ask if I'm not sure of something. I don't claim to be an expert in every single subject, because I don't think you can be, and I don't think you should be either. I don't think you should be that necessarily that one person who knows absolutely everything, because I think it's an impossible task. I do think it's an impossible task. So if I need help with something, I'll ask.
Yeah, because they said that like Isaac Newton was the last person to know everything about science that man could, because there is just too much information at the, in existence right now. And I think even when I think about my own relative expertise in mathematics, I still don't think I know half as much as I would like to. So
yeah,
it's really hard to quantify that. And I think it is in relation to whoever your conversations with. A lot of stuff came up there that was familiar. I moved to the southeast of England because I suppose my impression of Northern Ireland at the time was that once you got a teaching job, that was a job for life. And I think it might still be that way. Yeah, but I think one of the things that stood out was you saying about being lazy, in terms of not doing the plan and just focusing on your teaching. But I actually think that is how we should be training our least experienced teachers. So I'm a big fan of high quality textbooks. It comes up quite a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
Basically, that's taking a lot of the burden of having to think about what I'm going to teach. so you can focus 100% on how you can teach.
How are you going to teach it?
I
Yeah.
don't think you're being lazy at all. And I think actually that's optimum conditions for, someone's professional development.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So obviously, as a very talented music specialist, you're extremely passionate about quality music education in primary. And so my question is, why is music education important or perhaps essential at the primary level?
So whenever I talk about music or whenever I go anywhere or write anything, I put a PowerPoint presentation together. I always start. It is a little bit cheesy, and it's getting a little bit old fashioned. But there's a I'm not sure you could class it as a meme necessarily, but there's an image you can find online, and it talks about all the different aspects of what music actually is beyond music. So you can delve really deeply into what music is. Music is mathematical. I did a talk for Brewed Cymru on some aspects of how music and math link together on a really basic level as well. I'm not talking complex mathematics. I'm talking kind of useful maths that you can use in the classroom. It's very mathematical. There's a lot of language involved in music. It's not just necessarily about listening to sounds. There's a lot you can gain from listening to lyrics, or listening or looking at the background of some of the terms and terminology that are used in music. It can be very scientific. It's also very physical. If you've ever taken part in a really solid music lesson, if you're singing and joining in with something, it can be very, very physical. It is an art form, which means that people have got an opportunity to express themselves in a way that is important to them. And I think that's what people miss a little bit in terms of what music is that we kind of compare music teaching in primary schools with what we experience on a day-to-day basis, if that makes sense. So, we're surrounded by music and sound on a day-to-day basis. You just got to look at what people are experiencing and kind of consuming on things like social media, particularly things like TikTok and Instagram are filled with songs. But the problem is that you compare what happens in school with that, and it doesn't necessarily match up. Whereas a really kind of quiet, sounds really random, a quiet music lesson. I'm not sure how that works, but a music lesson which is kind of just thoughtful and allows people to kind of just show who they are and what kind of sound they want to make, I think is really important. And it's not about producing the next number one hit. It's just about having the opportunity to take a kind of starting point and kind of just do something that kind of means something to you, like any of the arts, if I'm honest. There should never really be any right or wrong answers, which I quite like that about music. Every single time you do a composition task, for example, you could give one class one kind of starting point, and what they produce will be completely different to what someone does the year after, or the year after that, or even 10 years after that, or even the next day. And that's what I like, is it's totally free of really any kind of constriction. But what I also think about music, particularly in primary school, is it's a real leveler of a subject. You kind of, when I used to like the old national curriculum documentation, because it was literally like a page long. It basically said, you need to do some of this, and these are your levels. Off you go. Whereas, if you compare it to something like mathematics or literacy, they're very rigid in what you have to aim for. Whereas with music, it's kind of like, go for it, see what happens. And it allows all people and all children to get involved in some way. Even if it's just a case of you give them a stick and they have to hit something with it because that's what they can do, then fine, that's what they can do. Whereas you'll get some people who will sing, or some people who will pick up other instruments. And it's none of it is based on prior ability in anything else. And this is something I found quite frustrating teaching in a secondary setting, for example, is some schools will set for, particularly for core subjects, so literacy and numeracy, and then maybe go into mixed ability groups for things like music, which I quite like. I like mixed ability for music, because you find that those pupils who are necessarily strong in other things aren't actually necessarily as capable or any better than someone who really struggles with maths or literacy. And actually, you might find that those people who are struggling elsewhere actually have a really great opportunity to shine in music, you know? And, you know, I've got a little girl in my class right now who really, really struggles with a lot of things. And she's got a lot going on. I'm not going to go into the details, but she will happily, if I'm sharing something, if we do news or something, she will stand up and she will sing a song for the class. And I just think having that outlet for your feelings is really, really important, and giving children that opportunity to make those sounds, and it not being recorded necessarily. You're not sitting there with an iPad filming them every second of every single thing they do. You just say, right, here's your input, make some sound, make something for me, and then see how it goes and see what you come up with. You know, it's very abstract, actually. A lot of primary music can be, and I think that's and again, I'll talk about this later on, because I think that's something that scares teachers when it comes to primary music, is they're worried about things sounding bad, whereas actually they're not focusing on the fact that it's a really lovely outlet for people, just for 45 minutes or an hour, just to make noise and just feel like they're not being watched all the time. And I know there's a lot of movement in education, you know, to less kind of rigid assessment. But you know, you always have to be watching and paying attention to what's going on. But music lessons in particular just seem to be a little bit more free of those constraints, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One of my favorite instruments in the world actually is the boom whacker. I'm not sure if you've come across boom whackers. They are
sounds Australian.
It's funny enough, they do sound Australian, and do you know what? There's a lot of movement in Australia in terms of primary music education. Actually, you'll find quite a bit of research and lots going on over in the Southern Hemisphere. But yeah, boom whackers, and people who are listening to this who've ever played with a boom whacker will know exactly what I'm talking about. But literally, they're just tubes, but they are coloured to match certain pitches, and they are cut at different lengths so that when you hit it against something, it plays that particular note. And you know, I was talking about the immediacy of being able to create something. You can give a kid this massive tube and say, go and hit the floor. So they'll hit the floor and they'll create a perfect C or a perfect E. And say, well, you two, why don't you hit the floor at the same time? And all of a sudden you start creating harmonies. And that takes nothing. It takes no ability. It takes no anything. You're just giving them a tube and saying, hit the floor. And that's what I really like about it, is it's accessible to pretty much everybody straight away. You know, you don't, I mean, yes, there's a lot of theory that goes on in music, and you can spend time talking about that, but you can also spend a lot of time just giving things out and saying, explore. You know, there's a lot of exploration in music as well. You know, that's how even very well-paid composers find things out. They explore. They don't sit down immediately at the piano and compose something which is perfect. I know there are people that can do that, but, you know, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100 even, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to spend some time just pressing buttons and filling. And I'm sure lots of people listening will remember the time when they were, particularly in secondary school, where you had the keyboards and you would sit there cycling through all of the different sounds you could make, and it was great fun. And you get to the DJ sound, it goes DJ, and you love it. But actually what you're doing is you're exploring the sounds. And, you know, I've said it a few times already, but that's what I like about it, is it's very immediate. The result is straight away, you know, and the initial result might not be brilliant, but after a period of refining and working and teaching, you then get even better results. But as a starting point, you know, you can't go far wrong with everybody in your class having something in their hands and just making a sound. And even then, you know, you can buy books on using body percussion. Everybody's got you know, everybody can make it some sort of sound. You know, everybody can use their voices if they can. I say everybody, that's a little bit broad, but, you know, people are able to create some sort of sound using something that they have. You know, you don't even have to have that. And again, I said before about some teachers being a little bit put off or scared by things not sounding good, but actually you need to make bad noises to find out what actually works. And I remember I did a training session with Only Men Allowed, the choral group from Wales. They sent a few people into school, and honestly, the warm-ups they were getting us to do were hilarious, but they were quite liberating as well. They were, you know, you were making these ridiculous, stupid sounds, but it was quite fun. It was quite fun wandering around the hall, just making these weird and wonderful noises with everybody else. And once you get out of, you get past that embarrassment of making funny noises, actually, again, it becomes really enjoyable. So yeah, I think that's where I am. It's a really accessible subject for everybody, but it's also an opportunity for anybody to be able to express kind of how they're feeling at any particular point. I'm quite fortunate in that I can sit down at a piano and play some stuff. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a maestro, but I'm quite fortunate I can sit down and play a few things. And my head teacher will always come in, walk through the hall, and she'll say, I know how you're feeling today, because you can tell what I'm playing, and it'll change over time. And that's quite nice, is you can tell how people are kind of by how they kind of approach a task. The kids who are feeling really happy and energized when they've got a boom whacker will run around hitting loads of things and making loads of noise. And the others who maybe aren't feeling that way might just sit in the corner and tap it, but they're still making music, they're still making sound. So accessibility, I think, is key.
Nice. I think I would classify myself as someone who absolutely loves music, listens, learns about as much as possible, but will admit that I never managed to fit in as much time as I would have liked whenever I was teaching, a full suite of subjects. But I think you've made a very convincing case as to why we should, and I'm thinking about the focus that mental health has at the moment, particularly at this very moment. But we've got this mode of expression, and both in playing and in listening, that actually existed for millennia. So actually, we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. Just give the kids the tools. I've definitely seen those boom whackers before. I'd never heard the name. They were just in the music cupboard. They're absolutely fantastic.
If you get a chance to, and anyone listening, just go onto YouTube and type in boom whackers, and you'll see some amazing performances of particularly percussion groups. People like I'm not sure if you remember Stomp. They were quite big kind of 10, 15 years ago. And they created a lot of music using things like basketballs and water drums and things that weren't necessarily classed as musical instruments. And actually going back to, I've seen a few people teaching lessons using things like tennis balls and basketballs. You have to bounce the ball in time. You have to throw the ball in time and catch the ball in time, which is great fun. And you don't have to look very far to find people making it actually really quite advanced and technical music using things that are just everyday objects. And there's another group, and for the life of me, I apologize, I can't remember the name of them, but they perform songs on YouTube using tuned bottles. And again, it's something to behold, because it's so impressive, to the point where they've actually worked out how to tune multiple bottles and play two bottles at the same time to create harmonies. And it's not just a party trick anymore. It's gone beyond being a party trick to being something that's actually really impressive. But yeah, just having that opportunity to make sound. But boom whackers are great fun. You just hit them and they're great.
Yeah, like you said, given access to pitch straight away, you don't need to tune anything. Nope. You're making some harmonic sounds. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm totally with you on that. And I suppose my next question is, if you had to condense your approach, and I think you've already gone quite a ways to doing this, if you could condense your approach to the teaching of music to a set of guiding principles, what would they be?
I think apart from just letting people explore, that's quite important. Children need the opportunity to explore things. I would probably say, first of all, don't be afraid of things sounding, I'm going to use in inverted commas, bad. There is no such thing as bad sound. I mean, you can interpret something as being a bad sound, and you can discuss why you think it is a bad sound. But actually, what this comes down to is even just one of the first questions you asked me, trying to make a judgment on albums. It just comes down to personal preference. What one person thinks is an awful sound or an awful song or an awful album, actually somebody else will think is actually the best thing they've ever heard. And a little bit of it, if I'm being honest, comes from snobbery. People can be really, really uptight about music when it comes to personal preference, and I'm not afraid to say that. But everyone is entitled to their personal preference of music. Absolutely. If you look at my Spotify playlist, it'll be very, very different to yours, for example, or different to somebody else who's listening today. And that you are absolutely allowed that. That's one of the great things about art, is it gives you so much choice in terms of what you access and what you consume. But I think people need to not be afraid of things sounding like, and again, this is something that my teacher said in when we were doing GCSE, when I was 15, 16, and he said, I'm going to play you this, but it just sounds like pots and pans. But actually, to the person who created that, it meant something more. It was all right. It might have sounded to your interpretation was, it sounds like pots and pans, but what that person was doing was they were producing something that was meaningful to them. So I think people need to be less afraid of creating things that to them may just sound like noise, which actually to the child is something which might be quite expressive. So don't be afraid of that. The other thing I would probably say is you need to be confident. You have to go in and be confident. If children see you panicked about something, then straight away it's going to be really difficult to get them on side. And I appreciate that there will be lots of people listening going, well, I can't sing or I can't play an instrument. Well, actually, you don't have to be able to sing or play an instrument. If you can press play on a computer, then you can lead a singing lesson. You can guide children in singing and learn with them. But if you go in and go, oh, right, I'm not, it's not going to come across very well. The children pick up on that, and people will say that about. It's not new in teaching. If you go into a classroom and you're negative about something, or even you just go in with showing the wrong frame of mind, then it's going to rub off and it's not going to be a good session. Whereas if you go in and I'm not saying you have to be that children's TV presenter. You don't have to go in with banners waving and clapping your hands and dancing around. It's not about that. It's about just going and saying, right, we are doing this and it's going to be awesome. Okay. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But that's what happens in music. That you don't have professional musicians who walk onto a stage and are immediately perfect. They spend hours and hours and hours practicing and rehearsing and refining. Okay, it's that classic iceberg. That image you see success at the top, and actually underneath it there are hours and hours and hours of torment and practice and getting things wrong. And you need to have that dialogue with the kids as well. You say, let's give it a go and see what happens. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. We'll look at where it went wrong and get it better, just like you do with pretty much anything else in school. If you do a piece of writing, for example, you say, well, let's analyze our writing that we've done. Let's see where we can improve it. You can do exactly the same for a song. So you got to be confident. You have to be positive and confident. But I would add as a caveat to that is sometimes that does mean you might need to do some practice. I won't walk in. I run on a Monday. First thing on a Monday morning, we do our singing assembly. It's the best time to do it. First thing, 9 o'clock. Here we go. Right, we're going to start our week with some singing. But I very much have moved away from click and play and sing along with the words on screen because I can. And again, I'll talk about this in a little. It comes up a little bit later. So I can sit down and play the piano, but I can't sit down and read the music straight away. So I might have sat down on a Sunday for an hour and practiced just so I know that I'm confident going in and showing the children what it can be. And I'm more than happy. My next point, which follows on, is own your mistakes. Be happy to make mistakes. Don't go. Well, I say don't. You can't make people do this, but try not to go bright pink and cry in a corner because you made a mistake. Because everybody does make mistakes. I've been to professional concerts that I've paid for where people have made mistakes. I remember going to see the Lion King on the West End. That's a proper professional performance. And halfway through one of the scenes, they literally stopped everything. They took all the actors off, and a little tannoy came over saying, "Such and such has happened. We've had a technical issue. We'll get it fixed as soon as we can." And then they carried on. And no one batted an eyelid. They weren't bothered by it at all, because these things happen. And you need to take that approach in music lessons. If you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You sing a wrong note, it doesn't matter. If you get a word wrong, I'm the worst for it, actually. I get words wrong all the time, like permanently. I always get words wrong. Yeah, I'll be happy to sing it away, and I'll suddenly start singing the wrong notes, and all the kids will start pointing at me going, "What are you on about? It's supposed to be these." And And again, playing the piano in assembly in front of 200-300 kids, and I'll play a wrong chord or something, and the whole thing doesn't descend into chaos. It's just a mistake that is brushed over. I could tell you a story. I was playing the national anthem. I was playing the Welsh national anthem for a prize giving. All right, it was my first year at this school, and it was one of the first years that I'd actually lived in Wales, so I didn't really know the national anthem very well. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to do some practice. I had a free period, and so I sat down. I looked it up, because what I tend to do is I look up the melody and I look at the chords and I kind of busk from there. So because for me that works a little bit better. So I found the melody and I found the chords. I was like, right, the Welsh national anthem is in E flat. Here we go. So I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and I had this little scrap of paper with the chords written on. And I practiced and I practiced and practiced. I was like, right, so I think I can do this. I think I can make this work. I practiced with, I was doing a singing unit with my year 8 classes at the time. So I thought, I'll practice with them. We'll practice together so I know what I'm doing. So then the night came to do some music for the prize giving. And this hall was massive. I never really paid attention to how big the hall was until it was filled with people. It was filled with all people who won awards. There was some quite important, like the mayor was there. There was all sorts of quite important people in the school. Like, right, okay, here we go. So we get to the end, and we need to do the kind of the roundup and play and do the national anthem. So I sit down and I open the piano and I go, right, where's my bit of paper? And my bit of paper was nowhere to be seen. And there was no way, because of where the piano was, there was no physical way of me getting from the piano to the music department to find my piece of paper to get back in time, because they were literally standing up waiting for me to start playing. I was like, right, I just have to wing this and see what happens and go for it. So I started playing. So I played the introduction, and it was right. People started singing when I started playing. I was like, oh, brilliant, this is going really well. So I'm playing the national anthem. Okay, here we go, we're getting there. And then we get to the chorus. I go, oh, here we go. So I did a really big rousing rumble on the piano. I played a massive chord, and everyone's singing. They're going really wild. If you've ever watched Welsh people at the rugby, for example, singing the national anthem, they love it. They go absolutely wild for it. We're going brilliant. And then we get to the final little bit, and it was brilliant. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do a second chorus. I'm going to go again. I'm going to do it again. So I went again. And they were there. They're going, rah, really loud. And it was brilliant. I felt great. And then we got to the end. And I don't know what came over me. But I got to the end. It went, and then all I needed to do was play an E flat chord. And do you think I played an E flat chord? No, I did not. I couldn't even tell you what I played. It was something totally random, right? I think there was an E flat in it somewhere, but it wasn't an E flat chord. So I played this chord, and it sounded like this really kind of alternative jazz chord I'm going to go with. It was something like that. And you could see one of the other music teachers standing next to me, and he just looked at me. He was like, what on earth? What are you doing? And the head of department for the performing arts was there looking at me, and the front row of people kind of were looking at each other going, what was this? And then I played an E flat chord and stopped. And everyone was kind of looking around going, okay, that kind of worked. But even, but the point of that is that you've just got to own your mistakes, and you've just got to go with it. And that's what I quite like about music stuff, is that particularly in primary schools, you know, kids are going to make mistakes left, right, and center, and you just got to kind of go with it and enjoy those kind of moments. Because that for me is possibly one of the best stories I'm quite fortunate that, you know, as a musician, I've had a lot of opportunity to do stuff like that. And, you know, having rehearsals where you've got squirrels running through the hall and all chaos, you know, breaks loose. But yeah, and it's the same in singing assemblies. You know, you have a singing assembly where, you know, you might not have practiced enough or something's happened. And as long as you kind of, you know, honest, you go, well, do you know what? I made that mistake. It doesn't matter, because that actually filters really nicely into your lessons, because you take that kind of, you take that viewpoint with you, and you make a mistake, or the kids make a mistake and say, well, do you know what? You've seen me make mistakes. I'm 30 years older than you. I still make mistakes when I'm playing for everybody, so it doesn't matter at all. All right, when we come to record it, we might need to do it again to get it right, but it's not the end of the world. So yeah, I would say absolutely own your mistakes and be honest about the fact that people make mistakes. Even people who've been doing it for most of their lives, who are paid to do it, still make mistakes. I think that's really, really important.
I am.
So yeah.
I'm really glad you played the E flat, because the thought of a whole room of people with that sense of dissatisfaction inside that
oh yeah,
you didn't complete the phrase. Yeah, sometimes I'll intentionally listen to the end of songs just so I can get to the conclusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. And I mean, I'm thinking about maths lessons when you're talking about these music, and I think that'll be really helpful to newer teachers, because singing is something that I'm not a fan of doing in front of other people. But like you say, knowing that it's okay to make mistakes, no one's expected to be perfect. Try and throw yourself into that situation early on in your career, and then it gets easier as time goes on. But equally, like I always say, if you're going to give kids a maths problem, do the maths first. It'd be something similar with prepping for a music lesson. And equally, if you make a mistake in a lesson, you've got two choices. You can either pretend it's intentional, or you can ask them to explain why it's wrong. It's never a case of, well, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. It might feel like it, but sometimes we're thinking about 6 or 7 different things at the same time. You're not going to be perfect. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with those. I think they generalize, but in terms of music, where people do get nervous quite a bit, that's going to be absolutely solid advice for a lot of people.
And you know what? I still get nervous. I've been performing for years and years and years. And like I said before, I've performed on TV, I've performed on the radio, and there's not a time where I don't get nervous. But again, it's just kind of one of those life things that happens. It's a rare thing to have people that don't get nervous. Even absolute pros. In any field, to be honest with you, if they're going out to do something that's important, then you're going to get nervous. And the one other thing I would say is, like you said about making sure that you do the maths first, so you know what it is that you're kind of aiming for. But also joining in is really important. I think, like you said, not everybody's a confident singer, and it took me a long time. I was never a singer to begin with. I think as I've gotten older, and I've kind of grown into my voice a little bit. And that's a really important actually thing to talk about with young people, is that voices are different and voices change. And that's why sometimes you might find singing difficult. Because I remember vividly not getting into my school choir. We had to audition when we were in year 7 or year 8, I think it was, for the school chapel choir it was. And we had to sing Once in Royal David City. Anyone who knows that song will know it is very high and actually very hard. That opening stanza is very, very difficult. And it was a real big knock for me. So I didn't sing for a long old time. I don't think I really started singing again until I started teaching. And a lot of that was kind of being thrown in the deep end and saying, you know what, if you're asking the kids to do it, you need to do it as well. You can't just sit at the back and press play and kick back and marks and bucks. You need to be there working. I once got told by a head who came to observe a lesson saying that I was working too hard. I was like, well, do you know what? I was actually enjoying myself. I was playing the piano, I was singing with the kids. We were just enjoying the lesson. He was like, well, you should have given them time to go off and do something. It's like, well, no, because we were enjoying singing. We were learning, we were talking about singing, And I get some sessions can be very, very teacher heavy. If you stand up in front of a class of 8-year-olds for an hour and talk at them, then yeah, you're working too hard and you're not doing your job properly. But if people are enjoying what you're doing and you're enjoying what you're doing, then I can't see that being a bad thing, as long as you are joining in. And even like I said, in any subject, like maths or English or geography or history, you join in with the lesson. You go, oh, look at this. I didn't know that. I've learned something today. One of the kids goes off and does some research and tells you something. Oh, I've actually learned, And there's always that moment. There's always that joining it. And kids, I think, sorry, I shouldn't really use the word kids. Pupils and young people really appreciate it when you join in. They don't like being given stuff and just being left to it. They like to see you joining in. I always use myself as an example as well. I always say to my kids, because I grew up in England, but I'm living and working in Wales, so I have to teach Welsh, and I find it hard. And I say to the children, do you know what? I'm learning this with you pretty much. I'm maybe like one step ahead of you in some cases. You know, I learned this yesterday. I reminded myself yesterday. There's nothing worse than coming back to school in September and going, right, I need to speak Welsh again. And I haven't spoken the language for nearly 2 months. And I'm like, right, okay, here we go. So I have to relearn it. You have to put the effort in. But again, it comes down to that kind of owning your mistakes and being honest with the kids and saying, right, let's see where we get. Let's see how we get. And I might tell them something and go, oh, do you know what? I actually might be wrong with that. Let's just look that up again. Let's look that word up, and let's look that phrase up again. Let's double check that spelling. And again, it comes back to what I said before, is, you know, we can't be perfect at absolutely everything. There's always something that we need to work at. And for a lot of people, you know, that is the arts, that is music. And, you know, having to put in that extra half hour just to listen to that song or watch that YouTube video, just to make sure that you know what you're doing, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in your opinion, what's the single most important aspect of music education?
So I know I said before that the album question was probably the most impossibly difficult question. I think this is really hard, and people will argue over this forever. I'm going to try and narrow it down to 900 different aspects. No, I'm not going to do that. I think personally for me, whenever I start working with a new class in particular, the first thing I kind of delve into is what their sense of pulse is, how they feel music. Because I think if you're going to ask pupils to perform, if you're going to ask pupils to compose and perform their own music without your guidance, they need to have a really good internal feeling for music. So I could put a piece of music on, and it could be absolutely anything. It could be classical, it could be R&B, it could be rock, it could be a film score, it could be something, you know, totally obscure. And if they can really kind of feel the pulse of music and clap along with it or tap along and join in with the music, I know that we're on to a winner, because we can do some really good quality things. Whereas if you've got groups of people who are just flapping and clapping however they want, because they just haven't got that inbuilt kind of feeling for music. And some people do struggle to keep time with things, and that's a natural thing. You know, it's again, not everybody is capable of being perfectly in time. It's the same as not everybody has perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is quite a rare thing, to be honest with you. But you can learn to stay in time with things. And again, that starts right down in the nursery, you know, singing nursery rhymes together and singing along with each other and doing that regularly, and just having that inbuilt kind of feeling for music. I think that is probably, for me, the single most important thing, because it allows you to access lots more in terms of performing. You know, you feel like you can kind of get on board with a song or sing and perform more complicated things because you get how the music feels, especially when you start getting older and you start wanting to sing, for example, pop songs. You know, I mentioned earlier on that we tend to base our judgments on things on what we hear the most of, and a lot of what our children are listening to at the minute is popular music. That's what they consume. That's what they're hearing, and a lot of them want to sing these songs without realizing actually just how complicated they are. They're very, very complex things. As much as people like to make a joke about some songs, actually popular music is some of probably the most well-crafted music you will listen to. There's a reason why it's popular, because it's good. You know, it's written really well. But when you've got people who are singing really complicated rhythms and really complicated melodic patterns, you need to have a really good understanding of how the music feels to be able to join in with that. You can't just sing it and it happens. I think that comes from that internalization of pulse. Can you feel how the music is happening? And similarly, it opens up questions of, well, is it a regular pulse? Is it irregular? Is this time signature correct? Does it change? You know, and it opens up all sorts of avenues then, because you can suddenly notice these subtleties in some of the songs that you're listening to that you might not have noticed before. Again, talking about popular music, I think I'm gonna add a 0.5 to your question in terms of the single most important aspect is appreciating everything, like all music. You know, if I shared my Spotify playlist with you, you know, I've got a playlist. Funny enough, I've got a playlist of sea shanties from way before they suddenly blew up because of social media, because things like sea shanties and folk music, and particularly Irish. I love Irish folk music, and since moving to Wales, funny enough, I've started listening to a lot more Welsh folk music as well. I really love that. But again, I grew up. I'm of the generation that grew up with things like the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive and kind of early video games. So stuff like that interests me in seeing what people are doing. So my Spotify is probably the most eclectic thing. And you have to take that on board. When children come in, yes, lots of them will consume popular music through whatever it is that they're seeing, but actually a lot of children will come in. I've got a child that comes into school wearing Metallica hoodies because that's what she listens to, because her mum listens to it, and it's great, it's brilliant. And then you get other people who come in wearing, or other band things, and you get people coming in with this, that, and the other. So I think it's that wider appreciation that everything is valued. Every aspect of music is valuable to somebody. And like I said, going back to the pots and pans I told you about before, someone who's gone out of the way to create that. It's not just someone's fallen down the stairs and recorded and gone, hey, there's my music, and it's having that inbuilt appreciation, so you can put something on for someone for a class, and you don't have them sitting there giggling, going, "Oh, look at them, they're singing. Those men are singing high." Well, yeah, men do sing high. Let's play a song by John Legend. Listen to how high he's singing. You're going to laugh at him? No. Well, why not? So it's having that, making sure that you have that kind of respect for everything that's created. But yeah, that was my 0.5. I think overall, if you can develop a really strong sense of pulse and feeling for music, you can then go on to appreciate the craft of pretty much any other music that you listen to.
So that's a great answer. Yeah, and I think Spotify over the years has really broadened the amount of music you can have access to.
Yeah.
Like at the minute in work, whenever I'm sort of really focusing, I'll listen to is it Rangas? Sort of like that Indian classical music,
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that 10 years ago, but it's just totally different. So you can almost zone out completely. And whereas if you listen to stuff with lyrics and things, it's a different story. And I'm with you. I think definitely can learn, and children do, because I'm thinking about my own kids, and not clapping in time when they're maybe 1-2 years old, but by the time they're 4 or 5, they've had that practice, and then you can do so much more, because I'm thinking back to when we're talking about playing instruments ourselves and things, a lot of the time you'll have a sense of where the root of the key is, and then you just sort of go with the flow, don't you? And you're almost opening those doors. For the kids to do that, down the line. Yeah,
but it takes practice. It's again, unless you are very fortunate to be someone that just gets it. It does take practice. It does take a lot of practice. So talking about Spotify, I know Spotify are a little bit questionable in terms of how much money they give to artists, but in terms of broadening horizons, in terms of what you can access, it's brilliant. We actually run a thing, talking of appreciating music. One of the things I introduced as part of our music assemblies, our singing assemblies, was every class gets an artist of the week. And I have a bank of about 50 artists from across genres, from all sorts of things. And some of them people will have heard of, some of them they won't have heard of. And basically what they do is they send their helper up on a Monday, and they take a random card out of the box, and then they take it back to the class. And then that week, that teacher can listen to music by that particular artist. And they can do it however they want. They can do it while kids are working. They can do it. I quite like to find a 15-minute period, that maybe that 15 minutes prior to lunch or something like that, where you kind of wrap things up, and everyone's kind of like, oh, we finished a bit earlier. What do we do? So I fill that time in with listening to our artist of the week. And again, that just through that simple act has actually really broadened how much music was consumed in my school, like immediately overnight. And again, you weren't necessarily just having to have people asking, oh, can we listen to this? Because that's what I like. You were playing things to them, and people were finding actually they were enjoying it because it was something they'd not heard before, or they were making that, because one of the artists I put in there was Hans Zimmer. I'm a massive Hans Zimmer fan. Have been for a very, very long time. I think actually as his work's gone on the last 10 or 15 years, he's got even better because he's kind of branched out, early Hans Zimmer 2000s kind of, you can almost tell that it's his work because you can almost hear it, the same themes popping up in films. But then he kind of started branching out. He wrote the music for Planet Earth 2, I think it was, or Blue Planet 2, sorry. And that, if you get a chance to listen to an album, that is absolutely outstanding music. It is unbelievable. But, people were listening to it going, oh, I didn't realize it was this person and that's what their name is. I've heard this before and I like it. It's something that I've, or giving them, Brian Tyler's another one. Brian Tyler is a film composer, but he does really great kind of fusions between kind of really heavy rock music with orchestral music, and it's brilliant. This is great action music, and people are listening going, this is awesome stuff. How have I never heard this before? It's like, well, you probably have, you just haven't noticed before, or you didn't know what the name of this person is. So yeah, just through that simple act of it sounds awful, but almost forcing people to listen to different types of music has really broadened the kind of horizons of what people listen to. And because there's so many artists as well, and one of the rules is you're not allowed to have the same artist as you've had previously. You're never going to get the same artist twice in a year because there's more than the 39 teaching weeks worth. There's over 50 in there. And depending on which teacher you give them to, depends on how they will consume it as well. So one person will listen to, say, like I know one of our teachers, for example, is a massive Take That fan, and Take That is in there. So if you give her the Take That one, that she's going to be listening to their entire back catalogue of stuff, whereas someone else might listen to one or two of their maybe newer songs or something like that. So they're getting a different viewpoint of things as well. So it's a really nice thing to do that, actually. That's one of the things I miss, actually, being working from home and not doing that on a weekly basis is something I'm really missing, because it was actually a real highlight, because and it got to the point once the pupils kind of got over the shock of suddenly having to sit and listen to Webern 12-tone contemporary music. They start asking to listen to it and start asking, can we listen to Artist of the Week, please? The only aside to that is you do have to be careful and making sure that, because some, for example, being in Wales, the Stereophonics are on there, but please be careful with the songs that you that you play. And again, this comes down to what I said before. You do need to spend a couple of seconds just making sure you know what it is you're putting. Now, Spotify does have a good filter. They've got an explicit language filter, so you can take things out. And this is something else that, and I know I'm kind of sidetracking slightly, but this is something else that does concern me slightly about music consumption. As an example, my daughter likes to play Just Dance, which is a great game. And I know people sometimes put them on, if you're kind of covering for half an hour and put Just Dance YouTube videos on, the kids love dancing along with them. But they purposely take out they take out any explicit language from them. So then you find that song on Spotify, and again, annoyingly, my kids have kind of figured out how to ask for things on Spotify. They'll put these songs on and kind of unwittingly, because they've heard them from somewhere else. And all of a sudden you're hearing this really explicit language. So you do have to be very, very careful in that respect. But that's kind of the nature of the world we live in generally with anything that we consume. Even if you're looking for a video on history, for example, and you watch it on YouTube, if you don't pay attention to it, all of a sudden something might pop up which maybe you don't actually want to be sharing with your classes. There is always that danger, but yeah, that's just a nice thing. Just having an artist of the week, which is totally randomly chosen, has made a massive difference in terms of music appreciation. Yeah,
that's a superb idea, and one I'm definitely going to take back to my schools. But I know what you mean about worrying about the lyrics and stuff. Because whenever I do my Times Tables Rockstar stuff, I spend a long time looking for instrumental versions that haven't just reduced the vocals down. So if you put on a Green Day song from the mid 90s, there's a fair chance you're going to get a good few swear words in order. And so it's spending time finding those tracks that you get the essence of the music, but you don't get you don't get the sort of the negative, I suppose, negative side of primary kids.
But again, that's all about. You're right. It's not negative. It's just it's not necessarily appropriate for the ages that, as adults listening to music, we have a very different understanding of what it is that we're listening to compared to our young people. So yeah.
As far as prep work goes, listening to music, that's not a bad thing.
I know, not at all.
The PBS session. And so, what is it that schools should provide a stellar music offering? What is it that they do so well?
I think it comes down to consistency and regularity. Not doing things once in a blue moon because you've got to tick a box. I think, and keeping it simple, actually, not trying to be overcomplicated. When you break down actually what pupils need to know and be able to do in primary music, it's not groundbreaking. It's basic skills. It's the kind of stuff where if you went to your local, the comp that your school feeds, for example, your feeder school, and if you went around each department and you said, what do you actually want them to know when they come up to school, when they come up to year 7, what do you want them to be able to do? Most of them will actually just say, please just teach them the basics. Just teach them the absolute basics. And if you get the basics right, so like I said before, getting that really inherent sense of pulse and performance and that ability to just join in and do things, I think is really important. But the only way you can do that is with regular sessions. And so that's one of the reasons why we do a regular singing assembly. I'm not talking just singing a song at the start of the because every school does that. Everybody puts the words on the screen, presses play, the kids sing along with it. Oh, this is really great. And then you do your assembly, you tell a story or whatever. Whereas actually having a dedicated music assembly where I'm actually teaching them to breathe, I'm teaching them posture, I'm teaching them to sit up, and I'm actually using that assembly time as a lesson. I'm not just treating it as a let's get together and have a little chat about all these things that I want to tell you. I'm actually teaching them and moving on. Because I am well aware. I remember when I spoke at the New Voices conference a couple of years ago. One of the things I did was I did a breakdown of my timetable, and I'm massively aware that teachers across the land have such little time on their timetables. When you break it down, when you take out your literacy, your numeracy, your statutory PE that you have to do, you take out your science a week. You take out your computing, your ICT time that your slot is booked for. It doesn't leave you with a great deal of time, when you've still got to teach humanities, you've got to teach RE, history, geography, you've got to teach art and drama and dance and all these. I'm well aware that teachers are short on time, but just finding that time, like I said, that 15 minutes before lunch, listening to something and talking about it in a musical way actually is quite useful. We do a thing. There's a really big thing in Wales, which is called slot drillio, and basically the idea is literally 10 minutes. That's it, daily, where you have a pattern for that week that you just need to practice. It's literally just asking a question, asking and answering, and you do it every single day. And the payoff from that is massive because it's that retrieval, that constant retrieval practice, and the same works for any subject, if I'm honest, and particularly in music. And if you're not playing music regularly and saying, oh, what instrument's that you can hear, or what's the tempo like in this? Is it fast? Is it slow? Does it change? Just having those quick questions. And actually, they're really basic things. If you know, and I know that this is where some teachers do fall down a little bit, is that their subject knowledge is a little bit lacking in terms of the elements of music. But there is plenty of information out there to have that. And even if you just focus on a skill or an element, a term, and just regular revisiting of it, I think that's where schools do well. And I know that there are some schools that can afford to buy in music specialists to teach their weekly music lesson, which is great. If schools have got that, it's an amazing opportunity to really develop music, because that's what music needs. It does need regular practice. It needs to be regular and consistent. I've taken over a job as a funny enough, when I was an NQT, my first ever job, I remember walking in, and one of the year 9s just sat there brazenly, looked at me and went, "You'll be here for about 2 weeks, I reckon." because they hadn't had that regularity, that regular input of good quality teaching. They didn't see any value in it. So if you're not regular, even just listening to music, then I don't think you're gonna be able to provide, like you say, a stellar offering for music. The other thing I would say, people that I think do well, and again, this is a really difficult one for me to say, but it is true, is investment. Schools that have got a good set of resources available to them will naturally be able to provide a higher standard of provision. And it's really disheartening to see, when schools don't have a budget for music at all, because it's not there. It's not their fault. It's just not there at all, because we've been squeezed budget wise for decades now. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for a long old time. You just got to look at the decline in music services and the fact that in England, I think I'm right in saying that they have music hubs now, which is basically where they've pooled all their resources. But it's it sounds really great, and I know that people can access them in various forms. But you've also got to think about why those hubs were put into place. And it's because other music services have closed down. It's not, I'm not painting over it. I'm not glossing over anything. Whereas people have probably lost jobs along the line because the money's not there for it, but yeah, it's the regularity, and also using your specialists in school. I guarantee someone who's got a bit of experience in playing an instrument when they were younger is probably going to have a really good time teaching musically than maybe someone who feels completely incapable of doing so. And that's something we do sometimes in my school, is every now and then I will, for example, go up to teach in year 6. Like I've mentioned, I'm working hard on Welsh, but sometimes I need someone to come down and really deliver some good quality teaching to those pupils. So we swap around every now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. I think primary schools who are set in their ways, and this is my class and this is who I teach, I think are taking the wrong approach, if I'm honest with you. If you've got someone who is a good quality music teacher in your school, why are you not using them? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't have to be all the time. I'm not saying every Thursday between the hours of 1 and 2, you have to go to this class and they have to come to you. I'm not saying that at all. But, if you've got a half term, for example, where, do you know what? I've got a really nice music thing that fits with my topic really well, but I'd like someone to do a really good job of it, then, make those amendments. It doesn't have to be complicated by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I think regularity and using your specialists as best as possible. And this is not to take away from people who try to teach things. And again, I've used Welsh before as an example. I try to teach Welsh. I actually really enjoy it. I love languages. But like I said, sometimes I just need someone to come down and check what I'm doing and deliver some really killer stuff for these kids to really get on board with, that I might not necessarily have the subject knowledge to be able to do. I think the other thing that people offer, if they're offering a really good music curriculum, is it's modern and inclusive of all the kids that they've got. I think people who still refer back to things that they did 30 years ago maybe need to have a look at some of the things that they're getting. And I'm not saying that some songs that were written a long time ago are not relevant. However, sometimes you just want to get the kids involved. You just want to get them singing stuff that they recognize and they understand as well. But again, by being modern, I also mean things like technology as well. We are living in the young people that we teach, I feel, are so fortunate in terms of the technology they have around them. I remember being in primary school and we had a BBC Basic computer, and you could program it to make some bleeps and bloops and flash up some words, but that was about it. It wasn't, we didn't have things like GarageBand on iPads that are just there. I don't know if anyone listening has ever come across Chrome Music Lab before, which is a free thing made by Google, and it's probably one of my favorite teaching tools, to be honest with you, because you can do so much about it. I've written articles and blogs about using Chrome Music Lab for music, for maths lessons, for all sorts of different things, and these things have suddenly appeared, and if people aren't making use of them, then I would say my advice would be to go out and start making use of them, because they are so accessible and so quick. Long gone are the days of spending hours and hours trying to create something which sounds professional, whereas actually you can do that almost immediately. And then the conversation then turns to, well, how can we make it better? Why does this work? Rather than spending time investigating sounds, going back to pressing the DJ button on the keyboard. So yeah, that's what I'd probably say is people that are kind of consistent and regular with their music teaching and making use of the specialists and trying to be a bit more contemporary and up to date with some of the stuff that they're doing. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Whenever people are answering, I always try to keep a track on, well, I'm going to ask about this, this, and this. But so many high quality tips and pointers and advice in here that I think it's impossible to, I'll still have questions tomorrow. I'll be like, oh, I should have asked Andy that. Can you send me the link for Chrome? Is it Chrome Music Lab?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do a bit of self promotion later as well. But yeah, it's literally if you go into Google and type in Chrome Music Lab, it's the first thing that comes up. There are loads of and some people listening now who've used it before will be nodding their heads, going, "Oh, it is amazing," because it genuinely is. Because it's basically what they've done is Google have created what they call little experiments, and each thing is just like a tiny little snippet. It's tiny, it's microscopic. There's one in there where there's just some strings, and they're spread far certain length apart. And when you click on the string, it shows you the waveform. So the lower ones have got nice long waveforms. As you get higher, they get quicker. And because they're quite scientific, the experiments as well, they show you actually the science and the visuals behind what's happening with the music. But it's also got little melody makers and little things where you can create patterns and melodies very, very quickly. It's almost like an incredibly basic digital audio workspace, DAW. And anyone who works with music production will know things like GarageBand. That's what that is. It's just a really simple, basic stepping stone. One of my favorite things on there is called Kandinsky. And this is what I was talking about really early on in terms of self-expression and art and just exploring and investigating. So the Kandinsky experiment is literally a blank page. There's nothing on it. And if you've on a tablet or you've got a mouse, you click and you draw shapes, and each shape makes a different sound. And if you create a circle, then it fills the circle in and puts some eyes on it and it sings for you. Or if you do lines or dots, depending on where you put them, it changes the pitch and the sound and the instrument. And it's fantastic because you can draw all sorts of fun pictures on it, and it creates just these things. And it automatically makes sound based on what you got. And again, it comes back to what I said before about people not being afraid to make things that sound what they would consider bad, because wherever you put the marks on the screen, it just plays them. So there might not be any tempo or pulse to it, but you're investigating the sound and the pitches based on where you put them. That's one of my absolute favorite ones, because you literally start from nothing, like absolutely nothing, and you just make, and those marks then are interpreted by the system as sounds, which is absolutely fabulous. It's amazing for early years who are, investigating mark making a sound kind of association. So yeah, that's a really great one. I could talk for hours and hours and hours about Chrome Music Lab on its own. When I did my session for Bread Cymru, I actually avoided talking about Chrome Music Lab because my talk would have been ridiculously long. I wrote an article, a couple of blogs for Nexus Education. And it was literally about kind of cross-curricular music, but specifically kind of targeting how to use Chrome Music Lab. And, when you're teaching things like, I love teaching symmetry and patterns and repeating patterns, because you can create all manner of different pictures and images, and it will translate them into sound as well. But what you can also do is if you get a people who just clicks wildly and randomly, and you listen to it, and you go, well, does this work for you? And they go, well, no, it doesn't. Well, why doesn't it work for you? And you start opening up those conversations. Whereas if you have a people who is quite methodical and count where they put things and works out, and suddenly it sounds a bit more like a piece of music that they might have wanted to produce. It's like, well, why is this one better? And the immediacy of it is absolutely fantastic. And again, that's what comes by. I was talking to you about Boomwhack, is immediacy in music is really, really important, and accessing things straight away, because you can see results straight away. And one of the things I did, just as an aside, is I bought a small little portable Bluetooth speaker with an aux lead as well. So what I can do is I can wander around the classroom and plug in their iPads or their laptops so they can listen to what everybody else has done. It's a really quick way of assessing what people have done, because you can plug it in, press play, and everyone can hear it and go, oh, that's really good. I want to do that, or how did you do that, or let's see it. And then, you know, if you're a bit more kind of tech au fait, you can maybe cast it to your screen so they can see what they've done as well. There's hours worth of work in Chrome Music Lab. Honestly, it's you know, if you haven't investigated it before, you need to investigate it, because there's all sorts of different things. You know, I'm in the process of writing a document. I'm not sure whether you could call it a book just yet, but looking at kind of cross-curricular entry points using music. And there's a big heavy section on maths and music, because, you know, this comes back to timetabling. You know, if you haven't got time to teach a music lesson, well, why don't you teach your music in your maths lesson? You know, why don't you teach symmetry through Chrome Music Lab? But actually what you're doing is you're getting the pupils to think logically about their patterns, where they're placing their blocks in a symmetrical way or in a repeating pattern kind of way. So they're thinking mathematically, but actually what they're doing is they're working musically. You know, you do have to be you can be very clever with where you find your music lessons. You know, it doesn't have to be necessarily a dedicated music lesson, because, you know, timetables are packed.
Yeah.
You know, there's no two ways about it.
Yeah, I think you have to be, because there aren't enough hours in the day for all the things we want to teach kids. And
no,
you know, like for me, I'm also like, don't teach data handling in science lessons, because you're going to cover that in maths, or vice versa. You know, that's one together. And yeah, absolutely with music, because you're absolutely right. Music and mathematics are very closely related, if not brother and sister. And you know, it's like the penny is starting to drop about, and I'm thinking, I want to go and implement this in class straight away. You know, that consistency, doing things every day, little bits. I think that would have made a massive difference to my practice. And you know, because like I say, I'm coming at this from an angle of someone who loves music, but just could never fit it in. But I think, I think those principles of what people do really well, you know, I think come across really strongly. And just as an aside, myself, we have a woodwind progression where children start off very young with the ocarina, and then you're moving on towards the clarinet as they get older. But obviously, the last 2 academic years, there hasn't been much woodwind.
Yeah, that's gone. So there's gone. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say that that's been kind of the best way for me to put that is, so years ago now, they came up with a thing called wider opportunities, which is probably very similar to what you're talking about, where there was kind of this disparity between who was learning a musical instrument and who wasn't learning a musical instrument. And basically it came down to the children that passed the listening test were the ones that got the chance to learn a musical instrument, and then others didn't. And then as time went on and budgets were squeezed, it then became who can afford to learn an instrument. But then what they did is they introduced this thing called wider opportunities, where basically they were taking their music teachers, their peripatetic staff, and instead of teaching 1 or 2 children, they were teaching whole classes, which I think is probably what you were talking about. They start off with one instrument, and then they progress through different things. And again, that's something that they started doing in Swansea as well, is they started sending someone in to do whole class teaching. And again, it sounded like a big bunch. We had brass teaching. It was great, but it sounded like for 50 minutes on a Thursday afternoon, we had a room full of Mexican taxis all beeping horns at each other. And it was brilliant, but it was great because the kids were accessing it. You know, they were enjoying it. And like you said, some would then maybe go on to progress to other things, or they would make the instruments more complicated. So yeah, the woodwind one's a great one. Start with an ocarina, because again, you've got that immediacy. You put it to your lips, you blow, you've got a sound, perfect. And then as they get older and understand how that instrument works, and I gotta say, you know, think something like a clarinet, I really struggle with reeded woodwind instruments. I that's one instrument I would happily admit to not being able to play at all, because I really struggle with it. So
yeah, and just as you say that, I'm thinking of walking past Year 5 on a Thursday afternoon, and you know, it's almost a bit like in Star Wars in the cantina thing.
Yeah,
because it's a really melodic sound, you know, even when played badly, it's still really interesting to listen to. But I think the school's made a decision that they want every child to have the opportunity to play an instrument. And I'm not sure how many of those were sourced through outside programs, probably quite a substantial amount. But I think that's something that they hold dear. But at the minute, we've gone to GarageBand, because like you said, of all the reasons you described. You've got that immediacy, you've got that chance to explore with sound and composition, so we don't lose, X number of months, because I think it'll probably be September before Woodwind becomes a realistic possibility at the earliest.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of people that say they don't like the recorder, but the recorder is probably one of my favorite instruments. Played well, it is absolutely unbelievable. And again, it's easy to kind of start off with. I think that's why, as much as parents moan and teachers moan about listening to kids blasting down their recorder, because it's funny to make a really high pitched whistling noise. But again, they're really easy to access. They're very, very accessible, very, very quickly. And I think that is really key for children and young people, because it doesn't matter how talented you are, or how how much you're willing to work on something. If something doesn't progress well enough in time, you're going to lose interest in it. And there's been times, in the past, I think it's one of the reasons why I didn't really stick with doing grades on the piano, for example, because I'd spent so long playing the trumpet from an early age that it just made sense to me. Whereas transferring that skill to playing a different instrument across two hands, across two staves, it didn't click straight away for me. So I was very quickly against it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I should. And the same goes for learning instruments. I've seen some people play, just do amazing things with recorders. People still see them as kind of little tune a day type things. But if you kind of think outside the box a little bit, actually you can do some great things with them, because, like I said, they're accessible. So
yeah, they've got the fundamentals of music contained within them, like you say. But you're absolutely right. They can be quite grating whenever you decide to full whack for it.
Yeah,
I do with my kids too. And I suppose, are there any pitfalls that schools who struggle to provide decent standard music that we should try and avoid?
I pretty much, it's the opposite of what you said. I mentioned earlier on where I'm not a big fan of people teaching a music lesson just to tick a box to say they've taught a music lesson. And the same goes for everything. It's not just music, it's any subject. Getting to the end of a term and going, oh, I haven't taught this, I better do a quick RE lesson. It's not good practice. And people will try and get around it by doing things like having a celebration week. Marvelous. Look, we're doing a whole week of expressive arts. That's great. But actually, if you take that week worth of expressive arts and spread it across the year, you're not really providing a great provision for your subjects, if I'm honest. And some people won't like me saying that, because people will do. And please don't take this as me saying I don't like celebration weeks. I actually really do like celebration weeks. I like it when a school maybe takes chunks out of their timetable and saying, you know what, this week we're going to spend the entire week doing some really interesting science investigations. We're just going to knock our timetable on the head. We're going to we're going to get people in to talk about stuff. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's going to be an amazing week. But it's a supplement on top of the science they're teaching throughout the year. And the same goes for the expressive arts. People will put on a week of things. We'll get musicians in. We'll get artists in to work with the kids. We'll do this. We'll get a dance teacher in to do something. We'll do a drama workshop. It'll be fantastic. And at the end of the week, we'll take a load of photographs, put it on the blog, and there you go. This is our expressive arts. How good are we? But if you walked into a classroom and said to a kid, right, can you let's listen to this piece of music. Can you tell me about it? And they look at you blankly going, they haven't actually learned anything. They've done some really nice activities, but they haven't learned anything. And, that's been a real, learning is one of the biggest things that's come up in the last few years in terms of research. We need to get pupils to learn. And the only way to do it is by doing it regularly, So please, by all means, anyone listening, do your celebration weeks. They are lovely. I love a celebration week. They are absolutely brilliant. And it's a great opportunity to kind of wind down away from the day-to-day grind of your timetable, because timetables are hard work. Sometimes you look at your timetable and go, oh, it's Friday and I don't want to do this, but I've got to, because I need to do it at this particular point. But as long as those things are supplementing and adding on to your curriculum, that's the important thing. I think where people just use them as a tick box exercise, then it's not good quality teaching, because just doing an activity as a one-off, you're not going to learn anything by doing that. I'm afraid. And that goes for every subject. I'm not talking from a musical point of view anymore. It's everything. People will be in uproar if you didn't teach maths at all, and then you did a maths week and go, oh, look at all this maths that we've done, isn't it great? They would ask questions, and rightly so. So why then behave like that towards other subjects? I think that's the one major thing that is a big bugbear for me is where schools shoehorn in a week like that and say that they're teaching those subjects when they're not. They're providing some nice opportunities to do those subjects at that particular point, but in terms of learning and progression, I would question whether any learning and progression is actually happening at all.
Yeah.
I know that sounds quite negative, but I think it is an important point to make.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. And it goes back to what you said earlier on about if it's happening consistently, then pupils will value it. If they see, like, for instance, me teaching 20-minute music lesson one random Friday, they're not really going to care, are they? But if it's something that we do and we show them that we value, then it becomes a part of the sort of the identity of the class and the school. So I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I was like, yes, that's probably the most important reason to be consistent, is so that everybody buys in, everybody values it.
I think we're in a bit of a golden age of research and availability for things. I think the internet, for all of its downsides, is actually a really great resource for finding things that we can do. And I think long gone are the days of I don't want to name names of things, but I'm going to name Music Express as an example. Because at the time when Music Express was released in I think it was 2000, 2001, maybe, it was perfect for what the national curriculum was. It covered all of the skills that you needed to, and it did it in a way which was planned for the teachers. They didn't really need to think about it. And again, we talked about this before. We were talking about thinking about how you're teaching rather than what you're teaching. But as time has gone on, and particularly with the internet and social media and things like that, I think a lot of the content for pre-made schemes needs updating. And the danger is that people still fall back on, like I said before, things that they've used for the last 20 or 30 years that are not relevant and contextual to the pupils we have in front of us. And it's all well and good putting a CD into the CD player and putting this song on that you've sang for the last 15 years with your classes, but some of them are going to sit there and they're going to be like, what on earth is this? What are you making me do? Funny enough, this is a big aspect of what's happening in Wales generally with the new curriculum. Is the curriculum now is becoming very fluid and changeable. You don't do the same thing year on year on year on year. Because it's comfortable and it's worked. You do things and you adapt them based on the pupils you have in front of you. So one year you might have a cohort that for whatever reason they love singing nursery rhymes. So that's what you're going to do. Whereas you might have one the year after that are much more grown up in terms of their musical tastes, and you have to switch it out completely. But what you do is you pick activities which are changeable. You're not doing an activity because it fits with the sequence of lessons that you took from a book 20 years ago, because it's you're keeping it up to date. So yeah, the other thing that I would probably avoid doing in terms of trying to find things that fit with your theme and topic, and again, themes and topics are questionable. I'm not sure if I'm right to say that, but sometimes the themes and topics that people have been working on are not necessarily the right entry point for your curriculum. I know schools out there do run their curriculums based on a book instead of a theme and a topic, or you get some really kind of outfield things like, here's an object, let's make a curriculum from that, and it can go a little bit in the opposite direction. But I think the topification of music, I think, is one that needs to be avoided, because if you pull in things from a pre-written scheme, it's not necessarily going to be contextual to what it is that those children are supposed to be learning about. And again, if you want them to really engage with something, say your topic is the Romans, and you're suddenly pulling a series of music lessons from a pre-written script, which is totally different, just because you need to teach that skill in music. Well, that doesn't work for me. You can take those skills, take those activities and flip them around, but you need to do that work, I think. So yeah.
And do you think it's easier for larger schools to deliver a high quality music curriculum because of the sheer, the number of people they can share the work across? Do you think there's a difference in a one form entry school and what capacity they have? What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is the difficulty with anything to do with curriculum, is that it's not a one size fits all for anyone, because like you said, I've been fortunate enough to work in both. So currently I'm working in a one form entry school, and the work is massive, but I have complete control over what happens in my classroom. But on the flip side, I've worked in a 2.5 form entry school, and we've planned across like 2-year groups. So I worked with a year 3-4 team. So there was 5 of us. So in terms of workload, it makes work a lot easier, because I would take the music stuff, and I did music and science, I think I did, where someone else would take the literacy, someone else would take the numeracy and the Welsh and whatever. So in terms of resourcing that way, it was much easier. But it was still reliant on, it wasn't massively scripted. It was still reliant on that individual teacher taking those resources and things and delivering them for their class in the way that suits their class, which was quite nice, actually. It wasn't everyone must have this in their book on this particular day, and it must be exactly like this because it must be the same. It just meant that the workload itself was shared out. So yeah, absolutely. And I do appreciate that, in terms of smaller schools and workload, music probably is lower down. So I think, there are things out there. But, if, again, talking about investment, there's a music provider called, I believe it is Charanga, is the name of it. And I think if you are part of a music hub in England, I think some of them do actually subscribe to it and you can access it. So, and when I was talking about things being more up to date and contemporary, that stuff is all online and it's really accessible for teachers. So, and it's adaptable as well. There are some things that are in there that are kind of non-topic linked, if that makes sense. It's an activity to develop listening, or an activity to develop rhythm and timing, which is actually what your music curriculum should be, rather than linking every single aspect of it to your topic, because you lose the musical focus, as it were.
Nice. So you've almost got, this is the journey that you take to become a more proficient, not necessarily just musician, but appreciator of music.
Yeah.
Comprender of music. Comprender. I'm getting confused with Spanish now.
Comprehender.
Comprehender of music, and then everything else you make suitable to your class. So you know the journey that the average kid goes on, and then you can make it relevant. Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Nice. And if I want to get better at teaching music, whose blog should I be reading? What books should I be looking for?
Again, we're in a really great position. The first person I would, if you're on Twitter, and I assume most people listening to this probably are on Twitter, I would follow Jimmy Rotherham. He is at Music Edu for All, and he's probably popped up on people's timelines every now and then. He was in the news a couple of years ago because his school up in Leeds, I believe they are, was offering epic amounts of music to their school, and their results went absolutely through the roof. They were just phenomenal, and they provide lots of regular music. So I would definitely follow him. And he's just been working with Nicola Benedetti at the Benedetti Foundation. For anyone that doesn't know who she is, she's a very, very excellent solo violin player from Scotland. She is, and she's heavily involved in music education. They've just put together a series of, I think, 18 lessons. I think it was 6 lessons for foundation phase for the Key Stage 1 and 12 lessons, I think, for Key Stage 2. Don't quote me on that. I would need to just double check the numbers. But basically, they put these things together for for people working at home, specifically for home learning. And they are very much about developing skills, developing those senses of timing and pulse. So taking away necessarily the topic aspect of it and just focusing on the skills. So yeah, I would definitely follow them. And again, if you go to, I think, Jimmy's page on Twitter, I think he's got a tweet where she links to that resource. The resource is it's pretty easy to find. I think if you Google it as well. If you Google the Benedetti Foundation, you'll find it pretty quickly. Another Twitter person is at Nick Sermon. He, again, at the start of lockdown, I think it was last year, he started putting together a website called music-education.co.uk. And basically, he's just pooled any free resources he could find for teaching music. And it's blogs, it's websites, it's any kind of resource you could possibly want. Because I think in anything to do with teaching, you know, you say about if anyone wants to improve their teaching of music, well, it's the same as improving a lot of things. You have to do a bit of work. You can't magically become this better teacher. You know, you're going to have to go out and look for stuff. You're going to have to read things. You're going to have to listen to things, you know, watch some videos, read a blog, engage with that community of things, because at the minute, that's our best opportunity for improvement. You know, I've led inset sessions in the last couple of years, specifically on music, because we've had a target of improving expressive arts. And one of the first questions I said was to the staff in front of me, when was the last time you had any training on music at all? And they were really honest. They said, last time I was taught anything about music was during my training. Brilliant. And most people will probably say that to you. Thing is, their training was 20 years ago. And it's, you know, that CPD in terms of people going out and teaching teachers in that aspect doesn't really exist, because schools have got other priorities, unfortunately. You know, they do. You know, at no point have I said music's the most important subject. You know, I'm aware that there are other subjects, but schools don't go out of their way necessarily to have training in music, because if they've got a day's worth of training, there's probably a lot of other things they could put in there that are going to impact the school. So we need to be going out there and reading and engaging with people online. I think that's the best way to improve practice. You know, and there's a wealth of stuff available on YouTube as well. Just through some simple searches, if I'm honest. But, and I mentioned this before, you know, if you do want to improve, you have to practice as well. You know, you're not going to wake up in the morning and be a proficient guitar player. If you want to share something, you know, you do need to be one or two steps ahead, and that does take a little bit of work.
I think, you know, those who listen to education podcasts in their free time, I reckon they're part of the group who are willing to put that legwork in. So what we'll do is we'll share all the links in the show notes, and then obviously, and maybe give those people that you've named a tweet, you know, when this episode goes out, and then people will be able to join the dots up.
Yeah.
On who they are. That's awesome.
And just before you carry on, just a bit of self promotion. I do write a blog myself as well. My blog is musicularium.wordpress.net, just to put that in. But funny enough, since I've not been physically in school, my blogging output has been minimal, because what I tend to do is I tend to give things a go in school and then write about them on my blog. So it's been kind of on the back burner a little bit, but I mentioned before that I'm going to start tying all those things together as a kind of complete, hopefully readable resource. Again, you know, looking back at timetabling and people being short on time to teach a music lesson, looking at ways that you could put music into your other lessons, so you're still teaching, you know, you're killing two birds with one stone, to, you know, pardon the metaphor, as it were, because, you know, we do have to be smart in how we approach our delivery of stuff. You know, that's not to say that people should be completely ignoring, you know, standalone music lessons. You know, those things should still happen, but I'm hoping to be able to kind of provide ways in through other subjects that people can get on board with.
Yeah, I think the need for that balance comes across quite clearly in what you're saying. But definitely, you know, I think your blog is the first place you got to start. And when you're saying, anywhere I can get better at music, you know, well, I do write something. You know, I think you're too modest for your own good, Andy. So your work has inspired many and will continue to do so for a long time. Where do you draw your sources of inspiration from?
This is actually a really hard question. In terms of music, or in terms of education, or
I think you can interpret it however you want to.
Freeing it up a little bit. I do take a lot of inspiration from things I see online. You know, I'll happily admit that I see some things that I just think are really great. I think that's how I came across Chrome Music Lab. I was looking for one thing, and I happened to find that, and kind of started down that rabbit hole of working out how to use it in my own way. I tend to I fall into things. I kind of just find things randomly. You know, in terms of music, I like to be kind of, I don't know, I take a lot of inspiration from film music and film composers, because there's a lot of narrative in what they do, because that's the nature of the job, you know. Because it leads into a lot of discussion. There's lots of literacy you can do from film music. There's lots of art as well, and I think I take a lot of those aspects, those compositional aspects, and try and kind of put them into how I teach composition as well, because it's all about storytelling. I like that aspect of music. Yeah, it's a tricky question, because I kind of I explore online a lot. I think because music hasn't necessarily been at the forefront of people's minds, just in terms of development, there hasn't been a huge amount of easily accessible things until very recently. So yeah, I know, you know, I mentioned Jimmy Rotherham before, but I kind of look at how he works, and his passion and his enthusiasm for it, which is just never ending, you know, and it's massive, and that constant need to drive the importance of it, and just keep on top of the message in that respect. I would definitely say that. So yeah, it is a tricky one. That's actually a really hard question to answer in terms of inspiration. There's one composer who I came across in the last 5 or 6 years or so. His name is Eric Whittaker. I'm not sure if you heard of him. He's a choral composer, and one of the things I like about him is he's not afraid of being repetitive with what he does. You know, but you will listen to his music, and it feels really deep and thick and harmonious, but it's actually quite simple. The simplicity in it is what I like, and I've taken a lot on board of what he's done. And again, a bit like film composers, I try and add that into how I kind of approach composition and performance as well. You know, showing that something doesn't have to be complicated for it to be good. You know, you can do. I composed a thing on. It was a meditation on the last post a few years ago, and that was directly inspired by Eric Whittaker, because you know I've played the last post for the last nearly 30 years. You know, this year was last November was one of the first Novembers in a long time I haven't played the last post, and I kind of took his idea. Funny enough, I went to see him play. He conducted a concert at the Albert Hall, and I was blown away by the simplicity but the beauty of his music as well. So right, I wonder if I can do this. Can I compose something that just uses long notes? And it was a challenge, but the upside from it is it's created this really thoughtful and beautiful thing that actually, if you were to give it to other people to say play this, all they need to do is press one key and hold it down, and it will, and together it would create this really beautiful kind of lush harmony together. And again, I try and take that approach in school by trying to show that it doesn't have to be complicated to be good. You know, you don't have to be sitting on a guitar shredding. You know, you can sit there and play just long notes, and it works really well. And I remember he did an interview, and it just kind of this aspect is kind of me in school as well. Generally, is that he did an interview, and he talks about when he was at college in America. And he was in his final year, and his professors said to him, right now, Eric, you need to compose something serious. Okay. You need to compose a serious piece of music, okay? He's like, okay, I'll go away and compose a serious piece of music. And he went away and he did not compose a serious piece of music at all. He composed a piece of music called Godzilla Eats Las Vegas. And it... but it is brilliant. Because you watch it, and it's very much a performance thing. And it's about 15 minutes long, but it is absolutely outstanding. It's like watching a piece. It's like watching a film, but audio, like, you know, you're listening to it instead of watching it. I won't spoil it. I'm going to let people go away and look it up, because go and look it up. Go and look up Godzilla Eats Las Vegas by Eric Whittaker, and honestly, you will not regret it, because it is amazing. But I love that attitude where someone had said to him, "You need to do something really serious," and he went, "Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be really serious," and just went away and did his own thing anyway. And I really like that aspect. You know, just trying to put that into. Trying to get that, you know, attitude into the children, saying, you know what, if you want to go and do that, and you like the sound it makes, go and do that. You know, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not, you know. And if you can explain to me how it meets the brief that I've given you, then brilliant. If you can't, then we can talk about, you know, stylistic differences and progress later on. But I just like that attitude of just, yeah, I'm going to not do what you've asked me to do. I'm going to go and do this thing because I like it. And you know, that's something we haven't talked about actually is liking things, doing things that you like. You know, I will go out of my way if I know that there's an artist that I've chosen, I will find pieces of music by that artist that I like to listen to, and I'll try and share that with the pupils. You know, because sometimes that's actually what it comes down to. It doesn't come down to whether it's good or not. It's just, do you like it? You know, you've created that piece of music on GarageBand. You like what you've done? Yeah, awesome, great. We can talk about the ins and outs of it musically another day, but if you like it and you're happy with it, then you've achieved, you know? And I think that's probably one of my biggest inspirations, is just not taking it too seriously, but being able to produce things through simplicity and doing your own thing. I like that.
Nice. So during this, you've given us so much to think about and to learn from. Do you have any final pieces of advice for teachers who are now feeling energized and ready to up their music game?
Oh, I would say just give it a go. Just plan a couple of lessons, have a look at what it is you actually want to achieve, and go for it. I think one of the reasons why people don't necessarily maybe teach as much music is because they're worried about things going wrong. That's what I would say is just give things a go and run with it. And like I said, pick things that you like, pick things that you're comfortable with. I guarantee you, and you can ask this question to everyone and say, "Oh, what's your favorite kind of music?" Most people will tell you straight away exactly what they like listening to. One or two will say, "I don't listen to music." Actually, I reckon that's just a lie. You know, if you dig deep enough, you'll find that they've got some really obscure Himalayan nose flute love, which is fine. They absolutely, I'm not knocking that at all. It's just that some people are worried about sharing their passions for what they like in music. And once you get over that, once you get out of that mindset of people making fun, but it does come down to culture. You do have to build that into what if you've got a really open culture in your school where you can share things. You spend your weekends doing some obscure dancing, or you spend your weekends, I don't know, playing chess. I don't know. I love playing chess. It's great. And just being confident in that and just giving it a go and showing people what you do and what you're into actually will reap really much better results than shying away and not doing it because you're going to be embarrassed. Things will happen, and I mentioned this right early on. You will make mistakes and things will be supposedly embarrassing, but actually it's not going to be one of those stories that people tell for years and years and years. It's not one of those stories where people show up to work in the wrong shoes or something. Things will go wrong, and yeah. So just my advice would just be to get out, give it a go, but stick with things that you know and that you like, so that you are confident in what it is that you're doing. I think that's what I would say.
Nice, sound advice. I reckon listeners are going to be properly pumped up for teaching music on Monday morning. So then the last thing is the musical tier list.
Go for it.
Andy, you're going to take on the musical instrument tier list.
Okay.
I've chosen seven 6 at random. Obviously, the S tier is your God tier. A is very, very respectable, very strong. B is about average, and C is not great. But very rarely do things end up in C. So we'll have a look. So the first one, again, is totally opinion based. There are no wrong answers.
Let's see how this goes.
The first one is the Gibson Thunderbird bass guitar.
Ooh, now that's a fine guitar right there. The problem is that I don't know what the other ones are, and I like to compare things. This is hard. I think I'll put that in A. I'm gonna put that in A, I reckon, for now. Are we allowed to discuss this later on when I know what the other ones are as well? Can we change them?
I'm pretty sure people have changed things in the past, and feel free to say no. I want to move that. But that's a strong start, and you're absolutely right. I'm not sure if they make them anymore. You see lots of Epiphones around, but I'm not sure if.
It's not a guitar I've seen in a long time in terms of like contemporary. So, right, what we got next?
It was the first one I ever played that had a low action, and the difference between a bass guitar with a high action and a low action, it's night and day, really, in terms of what you can do. The original starter ones. So this one is, I suppose it's an electric piano. I think that's a Yamaha. I don't think specific.
A Yamaha upright. I would probably, I'd probably put that in because it's just a standard piano, isn't it? I'd probably put that in B, maybe.
There we go. That's really fun.
It's a pretty run of the mill sort of piano jobby.
So the next one is a ukulele.
Oh, God tier, straight away. Put it in S. Put the ukulele in S. I love a ukulele. They're amazing. They are absolutely brilliant.
There are 2 guys at work who've been learning to play the ukulele in the last 2 years.
Right.
Are one of our year 3 teachers and year 2 teachers, and they're always playing them around school. And they get hours of enjoyment out of it, and they're always playing in class and stuff. And do
you know what? Talking of accessible instrument, I know we're going back to what we were talking about before, but ukuleles are such a great introduction to string instruments in terms of like guitars and bass guitars, because they are very, very quick to learn, and you get this immediacy from them. So yeah, I love them. I'm always pitching whenever something comes up for potential for money. I'm always pitching for a couple of ukuleles for school because they are brilliant for music lessons. Sorry.
Excellent. Yeah, it's definitely give those guys the confidence to try and think, well, actually, do they want to go with the guitar, or do they want to get really good at ukulele and stuff like that there? Because you get some really lovely sounds. The next one is, as if you preempted it earlier on, is the.
I'll put that in A. I think I'll put that in A. Definitely. There'll be loads of people out there going, no, what on earth are you talking about? That needs to go right at the bottom. That needs to go in the bin. No, it doesn't at all. Recorders are great instruments.
Oh, I never thought I'd see a Gibson Thunderbird and a recorder in the same.
There'll be classrooms across the land putting them together.
Then we got the glockenspiel.
Oh, now I'll put that in B, I think. I mean, it is an absolute staple of a classroom, that one, the glockenspiel. But they can be headache inducing, if I'm honest. played too much.
Yeah,
I remember going to a school once, and I didn't know where the instruments were. And one of the kids pointed at the cupboard behind me, and I opened this cupboard, and every single glockenspiel and xylophone was there without a single chime bar on them. They'd all been taken off and put in a box. I was like, what on earth have you done here? So we took them all off. Why? Some poor person's going to spend hours trying to find the right thing. It's like a really bad Lego set.
Ouch. When they're played really well, it's absolutely amazing what glockenspiel. You ever watch like in orchestras and stuff? It's different.
Yeah.
And then the last one is it
is that an automaphone? Automaphone.
Yeah, that's
right. This is going at the top. This is God level. This is absolute God level. Now, again, there's a video on YouTube where these three fellas are playing Rage Against the Machine on a tiny little electric guitar, like a proper children's electric guitar, a children's drum set, and an automaton, one of those, and it is brilliant. It is absolutely outstanding. In fact, when we finished it, I'm going to go on YouTube and find it and share it, and I'm going to share it with you on Twitter because it is brilliant. But they sound absolutely hilarious, and they've got these little eyes, and it looks like a little person who's singing for you. Yeah, absolutely the top. Brilliant stuff.
Excellent. So let's have a look. You've got in the S tier the ukulele and the
automaton. I think that's what it's called. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I've got the wrong idea, man. You know why it's hard to forget the wrong name?
Yeah.
When you know the misconception, I've gone too far. And then A, you've got the Thunderbird and the recorder, and then in B, upright piano and glockenspiel. You happy enough with your decisions?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to stick with that. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So you've given us so much to think about, Andy. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
This. And I reckon, we've only scratched the surface of what we could have talked about, and hopefully get you back on sometime soon and we'll go even further. Awesome. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.